The guy played the computer game carefully and for a long time, striving to become the best. After 3 days of continuous play, he finally took the first place in the ranking. Going outside, the young man reflected on his boring school days and wished that reality was like a game where you could constantly get stronger. Looking at his phone, he realized that he had reached the top of the ranking, but now he had nothing to play again, and the time of lessons had already come. Thinking, the guy did not notice how he found himself in the middle of the road, where he was hit to death by a car, but he did not care because he was already tired of the boring world. A rebirth took place and he became the son of the Lingzun family, which was joyfully announced by his new father, lifting the baby in his arms. The man lifted the newborn baby into his arms, rejoicing at the arrival of his long-awaited son. As he lowered the baby, the father noticed the baby's stillness and became alarmed, thinking something was wrong with the baby. He pinched the baby's cheek, and at that moment, the reincarnated soul of the protagonist entered him. The baby shouted, "Wah!" which pleased and comforted the new father. The overjoyed father tossed his son upward, confident that he couldn't be in trouble. Floating in the air, the child tried to make sense of the situation, remembering only the collision with the truck. He wondered if he had really been reborn and why he was now flying into the unknown. As he fell, he felt a familiar sensation and was convinced that he had been reborn in another world. Realizing that he could not die for nothing, he realized that his father had saved him by jumping up and catching him on the fly. The little boy smiled with relief, realizing that this world was not as boring as the old one. 8 years later, his name was Jin, but the memories of his past life in the modern world were still with him. He now lived in a world of spiritual strength and cultivation, so different from his previous reality. Since birth, he had lived with his parents in the countryside, considering them to be ordinary people. The daily routine consisted of practicing and learning new techniques, which was far more exciting than a simple game. Cultivation allowed one to become stronger, and there was nothing more exciting to a young boy. In their world, cultivation was divided into 10 ranks, and the boy's mother, watching him train, was pleased with his talent as a cultivator. Knowing his mother's achievement, Sijin calculated that it would take 80 years to reach rank 10 through normal means. Getting frustrated, he decided to look for unconventional strengthening methods to shorten his cultivation time. Sijin's parents followed the old man, saying that their 16-year-old son could already enter his school. They didn't mind, but they thought he was too strong for a normal school. The old lady took offense, saying they were underestimating her school, which had many talented students. The father, smiling embarrassedly, admitted that they didn't know the true limits of their child's strength. All the while, Zijin was creating his weapon, the most accurate shotgun in the modern world. The kid found a blacksmith who added explosives, flint, and thunderstone to the gun for electromagnetic acceleration, as well as infusing spiritual power into the bullets. This weapon was to be the beginning of a new era in this world, and just at that moment, a huge monster ran out at the young man. Deciding to test the gun, the boy pulled the trigger 3 times, but the monster was only left with 3 small wounds on the side. Real flint and thunderstone to defeat such a strong monster, he didn't lose heart. He decided to use a homemade grenade made of flint. Pulling the pin with his teeth, he threw it right into the monster's mouth. The explosion of the grenade attracted the attention of his parents and teacher, who were passing nearby in the forest. They rushed to the scene and saw the boy next to the defeated monster. Everyone froze in shock, not expecting such a marvelous result from young Jin. The teacher said that although Jin had killed the monster, he was still at the level of a rank 3 spiritual master, and it was very dangerous to fight a level 5 monster. He added that such a monster could only be defeated by a spiritual commander. Without listening to it, Jin thought that the teacher was praising him without realizing the true meaning of the words. The old man invited the young man to study in his school, where the boy would learn common sense because following his parents, he could lose it even more. He also added that he would hide the student's identity to prevent a commotion among the other students, which caused the boy to wonder and ask about the necessity of this. The teacher explained that his father and mother were ranked 10 spiritual deities, and Jin was their son. The boy cried out in surprise and anger, not understanding how those two could be spiritual deities. The parents were embarrassed that their son had called them spiritual deities, and the teacher's reaction was angry, because he didn't understand how he could not even talk to his son about it. Spiritual deity was a level reached at the pinnacle of cultivation, and in the entire world, only a few people had accomplished it. The Royal Training Academy, where Jin was invited to, was the finest school in the continent and was famous for training outstanding cultivators. The boy remembered that his parents had also once studied at this prestigious academy. His mother couldn't hold back her tears as she saw her grown-up son off, while his father consoled her, promising to continue the honeymoon after his son left. Jin was in a hurry to get away from his parents' words, but he was followed by shouts about the exam and his superiority. The boy didn't like it and shouted angrily for them to stop bullying, as there were many other students in the schoolyard who heard it. Hearing the shouting, one of the guys decided to make fun of Jiejin by asking him since when children were brought to the Royal Academy exams by their parents. The students sympathized with the newcomer, noticing the approach of a bully from the Qin family, known for his antics, relying on his father's status as an army officer. Remaining unperturbed, Zijin walked past, concentrating on finding the examination room. The arrogant bully loudly called out to Xiejin, not expecting that his defiant words would simply be ignored. The rookie calmly turned around, skillfully pretending that he didn't hear the rude reference to him. The young master from the Qin family growled that he would teach him to listen and began to create a fireball. Shijin smiled in surprise, seeing the primitiveness of the magic attack he was preparing with slight disdain. The arrogant opponent thought that the newcomer was frightened by his supposedly famous fire martial art. In reality, Jiejin simply remembered how easy it was to learn such simple magic back in his early childhood. He instantly sensed the striking weakness of his opponent's spiritual power, barely reaching the level of an ordinary person. Taking a deep breath, the protagonist deftly exhaled a stream of cold air, instantly extinguishing the boastful fireball. The completely stunned young man from the Qin family stiffened in confusion, unable to understand why his boastful magic didn't work. Shijin condescendingly explained that he had simply temporarily removed the oxygen around the hapless opponent's hand. The opponent perplexedly asked about the oxygen, and Saijin, realizing the gaffe, cleverly dodged the explanation. Enraged by the humiliation, the young master of the Qin family furiously rushed towards Jiejin with the intention of attacking physically. Nonchalantly turning around, the protagonist once again used his technique, exhaling cold air directly into the attacker's face. The bully suddenly felt his breath catch, as if an invisible hand was squeezing his throat. He collapsed to the ground, gulping for air with his mouth, and Jiejin marveled at the strength of his skill, the first time he had used it on a human. The young man was joined by a girl who praised him for his action, for she didn't know what to do when she first encountered this bully. Mujilan politely introduced herself, and Jiejin, remembering his previous awkwardness with girls, embarrassedly responded to the greeting. The companion remarked with sincere admiration on Xiejin's impressive strength, to which he modestly replied, downplaying his abilities. Together, they headed to the hall where the disciples were to channel their energy into special stones that measured the level of strength. Xiejin watched the others carefully, noting that most had reached the level of spiritual master, even though they were just ordinary guys. Mujilan approached the stone, and her incredible power amazed not only Xiejin, but everyone present. It turned out that she was a princess of a neighboring country who had already reached the 4th rank of cultivation. Walking to the stone, Xiejin greeted the returning princess and sincerely praised her impressive result. Now it's my turn, the young man thought as he channeled all of his spiritual power into the measuring artifact. Suddenly, the stone crackled and shards shattered, injuring Xiejin, who hurriedly withdrew the energy. After stopping the flow of power, the stone only showed a 2nd rank, causing those around him to be perplexed. Someone present scornfully remarked that 2nd-rank people had no place in this test. Only Mujilan, who was standing nearby, realized the uniqueness of the situation. No one had broken the measuring stone before. Jiejin froze by the destroyed artifact, pondering over his failure in restraining strength. The entrance exam continued in the backyard of the academy, where all the entrants had gathered. The teachers announced the start of the practical portion, drawing the students' attention to the new rules. The participants had to gain 50 points in 2 hours by destroying demons of different ranks. It was allowed to hunt creatures up to the 4th rank, avoiding dangerous monsters of the 5th level. As the challenge began, everyone rushed into the forest in search of demons, eager to show off their abilities. Relying on his keen senses, Jiejin identified the direction where the smell of monsters was coming from. A disciple ran nearby, chasing after the cute bunny and begging him not to run away. Suddenly, something lightning fast flew past and struck the rabbit before the hapless hunter could catch up. It turned out to be Jiejin, sitting in a tree, who had aptly hit the target, apologizing to the upset student. The angry student recognized the 2nd-ranked rookie as the prey snatcher and resented his insolence. Jiejin joked about the rules of the games, but his opponent grabbed his shoulder and threatened revenge for insulting the Yin family. Suddenly, a stranger appeared and intervened, reminding him of the prohibition of mentioning titles in the academy. The savior turned out to be Lin Yun, the eldest son of the Lin clan, who had already reached the 4th rank and was considered a genius. The attacker, realizing the possible punishment for breaking the rules, decided to quickly flee from the scene of the conflict. As he fled, he continued to shout threats at Xiejin, promising violent revenge the next time they met. Left alone, Jiejin thanked Lin Yun, who noted that many people were afraid to socialize with him. The eldest son of the Lin clan offered to fight alongside the lad, extending his hand for a handshake. Jiejin happily agreed, secretly planning to study the abilities of a 4th-rank cultivator. At this time, The teachers in the academy were monitoring the maps showing the movements of the students during the exam. Most of the participants possessed rank 3 strength. Only a few stood out with rank 4 strength. The teachers realized that rank 4 tasks were difficult to accomplish alone and required teamwork. As they walked through the forest, Lin told them that many of the candidates were scions of noble families who were facing real danger for the first time. "We have the perfect plan. You on defense, I attack," Yun started to say, but suddenly became wary when he heard strange sounds. They were surrounded by two-headed, fourth-rank demon dogs, ready to kill the students that hour. Realizing the responsibility, Lin Yun decided to quickly deal with the threat, protecting the frightened Xi Jin, who was frozen. However, the protagonist was not frozen in place out of fear. He was looking at the two-headed dogs in surprise and pondering the reasons for their unusual appearance. Lin Yun used magic, creating sharp ice crystals and aiming them at the nearest monster. Standing over the defeated demon, the savior thought that it would be difficult to deal with this threat alone. Turning back to Sai Jin, he froze in shock. His partner had already dealt with all the other wolves. Observing the map, the teachers noticed that some students had already encountered a rank 4 demon. Suddenly, they saw the demons disappear, leaving the two students alone, and realized that this was the work of the young master of the Lin clan, because with his strength, a 5th-level demon could be defeated. The second mentor explained, the top-ranked demon had been specially placed to assess the student's ability to evade threats. His colleague pointed out that the death of the main monster would end all battles and end the trial early. The old man, listening to the conversations, realized that this was Sai Jin's doing and mentally asked him not to cause trouble. Lin, realizing the unusual nature of his partner, warned him about the rank 5 demonic beast ahead. Xi Jin, feigning worry, said that he couldn't face such a strong opponent. Thinking about it, Yun suggested that there might be an inexperienced disciple ahead who needed protection. Following the map, the teachers wondered why any of the students were heading towards a dangerous monster. Climbing up a tree, Mujilan carefully watched the slumbering top-ranked monster. The girl decided that killing this monster would guarantee her admission into the academy. Mujilan attacked the demon with a powerful magic strike, putting all her strength into it. However, the monster didn't even flinch, making the girl doubt her abilities. The sounds of battle and sudden gusts of wind made Lin Yun and Xi Jin wary. Realizing the threat from the awakened rank 5 demon, Lin insisted on retreating immediately. Mujilan continued to attack, daring to make a desperate leap toward the demon. A worthy opponent. Normal methods won't work. I'll have to use that technique, she thought. Before she could complete the thought, the girl found herself knocked down by the monster, ready to destroy everyone around her. Thrown back by the blow, the girl flew upwards, coughing and realizing her powerlessness in the face of impending doom. The unexpected surprise was the appearance of Xie Jin, who caught Mujilan before she hit the ground. After making sure she was safe, the young man ordered everyone to leave the dangerous area immediately. Xi Jin noted a sense of déjà vu, comparing the monster to the creature living near his home. His partner demanded action, marveling at Sai Jin's familiarity with high-ranked demons. The young man judiciously pointed out the dangers of fighting a rank 5 creature, suggesting they retreat. Lin recalled the easy victory over a rank 4 dog, accusing Xi Jin of hiding his true strength. Sighing, Xi Jin took out a grenade, activated it, and threw it towards the demon. With a lightning-fast reaction, he made everyone lie down, protecting them from the powerful explosion that followed. The shocked companions struggled to realize the fact that the 5th-ranked demon was dead. The teachers perplexedly watched the defeated monster's mark on the map disappear. The old mentor expressed his dissatisfaction at yet another problem created by Xie Jin and Lin Yun. Another group of disciples preparing to fight the demon rabbit were surprised by the unexpected escape of those. The unprecedented killing of a top-ranked demon in an exam for the first time in 300 years threatened to end the test prematurely. In order not to lose students, the old man proposed to admit all candidates this year. After the exams, the Royal Academy held an orientation for the new students. The girl persistently questioned Xi Jin about his abilities, while Lin tried to restrain her. Yun stood up for his friend, reminding him that everyone had a past they didn't want to talk about. Headmaster Li Xian came up on stage to congratulate the new students. He warned that enrollment is just the beginning, and one should not relax. The headmaster emphasized that only strength was valued in the school, and the weak would be ruthlessly weeded out. He mentioned that the academy had produced many spiritual masters, and most of the teachers were of high rank. The students and teachers of the academy participated in the recent war, helping to establish peace. Li Kin said that their strength kept the continent stable and prosperous. Xi Jin set his goal to work hard to quickly reach the rank of spiritual emperor. The guys behind heard his words and pointed out that the school was full of geniuses, but only a few reached rank 8. Lin Yun intervened in the conversation, saying that if this sounded from Xie Jin, he probably wasn't joking. The principal asked the disciple who had killed the rank 5 demon to come up on stage. The young man shushed the two guys who didn't believe in his strength and proudly walked onto the stage. Lin pointed his finger at the main character, confirming that he was the one who had killed the powerful demon. The guy's faces changed and could only manage to utter a surprised expression. What? Jin walked up to the stage, stood beside the principal, coughed, and began to pick up the words for his speech. The character couldn't believe that he was afraid to answer in class before, but now he was speaking in front of everyone. He said that they were now classmates and should be friends and help each other develop. The students started shouting that he was a rank 2 weakling and should not consider himself cool. Upset by the reaction, the young man depressedly started to walk down from the stage, thinking that he was unlucky in school. Lee Kin stopped him and advised him not to stand out. Otherwise, there would be trouble every day. The kid confidently said that no one could beat him anyway, and that was what worried the principal. The old man advised him not to use such tricks in front of everyone so as not to attract unnecessary attention. The next day, the teacher warned that there would be a test in the spiritual arts class with a target attacking the best techniques. The students immediately started summoning magic at the same time, filling the air with energy and glowing symbols. Mujalan used arrow breath, a technique that compressed the air into an arrow shape and secured it with spiritual pressure. When the arrow reached its target, the shape disappeared. The compressed air exploded and shattered the statue to pieces. The girl watched proudly as everyone around admired her and asked to teach her this technique. Shijin announced his turn as he headed toward the starting position, and someone in the crowd mockingly inquired about the abilities of a second-rank weakling. The young man decided to be less active and simply repeat after the previous student, using the arrow breath at 30%. The arrow released by Jiejin hit the target, leaving only a small crack, causing the spectators to be disappointed. Jin, chuckling to himself, recognized the girl's superiority in using the technique. Jalan was seething with anger, realizing that the newcomer had instantly copied her unique skill. Oh, that's crap, Jin muttered, realizing that he had accidentally unleashed his potential. The lesson ended, and the guy decided to leave, thinking that learning spiritual arts in such a chaotic environment was a bad idea. A girl suddenly appeared behind a pillar, making Jin flinch and contemplate running away. Attempting to run away but quickly tiring, he inquired about the reason for her persistent pursuit. The girl insisted on explaining his unexpected abilities demonstrated in class. The young man offered to discuss it tomorrow, citing important matters, but she couldn't understand what could be more important. It turned out there was a sale on Taobao, where all necessities were 10 yuan each. The princess decided to go to the market with him, squeezing through the crowd, and the guy was perplexed as to why she had come to a poor man's sale. The girl said that although she was a princess, her country was no richer than this one, so she asked to be treated like an ordinary girl. A sudden strong push in the crowd sent the confused girl straight into the arms of the surprised Zijin. She involuntarily pressed her breasts against him, causing the young man to feel pleasant excitement and a rapid heartbeat. Closing his eyes, Jin enjoyed the unexpected closeness, trying to hide his embarrassment. The embarrassed girl apologized for the collision, trying to pull away, but Jin, hiding his excitement, assured that everything was fine. Finally, a vendor appeared in front of them, and they, not holding back, started ordering everything. The princess took a soft sheep which reminded her of her homeland, where there are many nomads with endless pastures. She described the beauty of the night sky, the reflection of the moon in the lakes, and the light wind swaying the grass in the steppe. Watching the princess holding the toy, Sijin asked if she missed home, but the girl couldn't answer. After giving the sheep to the vendor, she asked for a cultivation talisman, surprising her companion. The young man wondered why she didn't buy everything she needed for training. The princess explained that this money was earned by people's hard work, so she couldn't squander it unless she earned it herself. Like a true gentleman, the guy took all the purchases and carried them himself, feeling pathetic shopping with his non-existent girlfriend. Walking through the forest, the girl noticed 2 stumps and offered to rest. The young man happily agreed, threw his purchases on the ground, and asked why the princess didn't want to get stronger, surprising her with the question. The princess explained that her small country depended on the support of strong powers, realizing her role as a political tool through a potential marriage. The girl expressed her hope for the opportunity to protect her nation by becoming a spiritual deity. She confessed that Saijin's words about achieving the highest rank inspired her despite the seeming impossibility. Shijin suddenly turned away from the girl and started rummaging through the shopping, looking for something. He pulled out a toy sheep, held it out to the princess, and suggested that they train together in the future. The girl, taking the toy, could not hold back her tears, touched by this unexpected gesture. To hide her emotions, she leaned against Sijin, surprising him with this sudden display of affection. Quickly gathering her thoughts, the princess jumped up and suggested that they immediately start training together in a duel. The boy thought he was being recognized for the first time, but quickly pushed those thoughts away, suggesting that they postpone the conversation. Mujalan insisted on an immediate duel, saying that she had already notified the academy administration. The teacher assigned as an observer reluctantly arrived at the scene where the two freshmen were meeting. Upon seeing the participants, the teacher became interested, remembering their success on the entrance exams. The boy began to panic and asked the teacher if he could refuse to participate in the duel. The teacher replied that the rules did not forbid it, but frequent refusals and losses in duels between arrogant students were considered a disgrace. He added that this was exactly what an outsider was for, and Zijin began to laugh. The teacher expressed curiosity to watch their duel, declining the student's request and warning that his opponent might finish him off. Shijin tried to dissuade the girl, citing his low rank, but she only laughed at his excuses. The girl rhetorically asked if it was nonsense, noting his talent and desire, and wanted to fight him at full strength. Listening to the conversation, the boy noticed the ever-increasing wind. The teacher saw his incomprehension and confirmed the speculation, for the girl could indeed use the element of wind. He explained that spiritual energy affects natural abilities, more often occurring in the form of fire, less often lightning and ice, and wind has the weakest damage. If a girl suddenly attacks a level 5 foul beast with thick skin, only a bruise will be left afterward. However, the force of the wind was more than enough to mess up a person's body, and the guy felt the wind pass over his arm, leaving a strong cut. Sijin grabbed the wound, not realizing when the princess had time to do this. The teacher pointed out that despite the low damage, wind attacks were hard to predict. He added that due to the underestimation of this element, the tactics for dealing with it were poorly developed. Apparently, the princess already understood exactly how to fight using this element. The young man created a shield in an attempt to protect himself from the attacking wind, but the air in the attack was dense and fast. It was hard to see. Shijin realized that he didn't have time to use defensive techniques against the opponent's swift attacks. The girl pondered mysteriously that victory was hers, and there was no way her opponent could win no matter what he did. Seeing Zijin turn to flee, Mujalan suspected that he would resort to trickery again, remembering the strange item he had used against a rank 5 demon. The student, remembering his promise to the headmaster, decided not to use any unusual techniques and ran towards the girl. Mujalan, noticing Zijin's approach, applied the dragon cyclone technique, creating a huge vortex. The young man abruptly froze in front of this phenomenon, not understanding its nature and scale. The teacher wondered how the princess was able to use a rank 6 technique on such a scale with only a rank 4 technique. It turned out that the girl had skillfully manipulated the wind, creating only the visual effect of a powerful technique. The mentor said that it was so simple and for diversion, then threw a pebble directly into the center of the vortex. Right, young man, something inexplicable and frightening began to happen in the center of the vortex. Shijin drew his sword and easily deflected the blow, astonishing the teacher with his swordsmanship. The teacher couldn't believe his eyes that the student had used his sword to repel the attack, and didn't regret the decision to be the observer of the entertaining fight. Next, the teacher saw the girl's excellent use of the wind element and the boy's mastery of the sword. The opponent angrily asked if the opponent thought of opposing her, using only a sword and underestimating her. Zijin confidently stated that he had figured out Mujalan's tactics and would be able to stop any number of her strikes with just one sword, challenging her to come up with something new. And so it happened. The young man fought perfectly with his sword against the element of wind, moving instinctively and ahead of his consciousness. The teacher noticed that after the student picked up the sword, his indecision disappeared, and the teacher could not understand how he had learned to control the weapon in such a way. Such excellent swordsmanship was a credit to the boy's father, who had taught him the basics of swordsmanship from infancy. Yijin was happy about it, because a real man should be able to wield a sword, and the longer he was in this world, the more he liked it. His father had told him that the sword was an extension of the hand, but they were not exactly alike, as the weapon had blades for chopping, cutting, stabbing, and piercing. To his son's perplexed question about special techniques, the father answered in the negative, emphasizing the importance of practice, which made the boy question his parents' strength and teaching methods. The father tried to cheer up the frustrated son by offering to practice together without special techniques, but the self-confident child decided to develop fencing techniques on his own. When the father said he was about to attack and asked if the boy was ready, he readily agreed. But when Dad accelerated and attacked, there was fear and shock on the boy's face. After the battle, the defeated entire child sat on the ground. It seemed that his father wanted him dead, for he was covered in scratches. The mother, seeing her exhausted son on the ground, reprimanded her husband for his cruelty, but he explained that he had to be stricter because of the boy's stubbornness during training. From the age of 6 and for 10, Saijin practiced fencing in all kinds of bad weather, and he enjoyed it more and more every day. It was his father's lessons that prepared Zijin to withstand Muzalan's wind attacks. The young man said that it was his turn now and rushed forward with a punch at his opponent. He realized that he only needed to get close, and when he was quite close, he jumped up and swung his sword, asking how she would be able to repel this blow. The princess was not confused and immediately used the fourth-rank technique, Arrow of the Gods. The teacher got a little upset and said that the guy's iron sword wouldn't be able to withstand the princess's strike, so they needed to stop them before anyone got hurt. The student swung his sword using the first-rank Thunderstrike technique. The teacher froze in place, looking surprised at the fight, even forgetting about wanting to stop it. The fact was that the young man had aimed his sword at the Arrow of the Gods and had even managed to hold it for a while. Still, he managed to defeat the wind attack at the cost of destroying his own sword. Approaching the girl, the boy offered a draw, considering the result of the duel impressive. In response, he only received a fist strike to his chin and flew slightly off the ground. Falling at his teacher's feet, Sejin heard Mujalan's confirmation of Mujalan's victory. Getting up, Sejin asked Mujalan about her aspiration to be the best. The girl rebuked him for being inattentive, claiming that in a real battle, all means are good. Mujalan hurriedly left, unwilling to continue the conversation after the winner was announced. The young man was puzzled by Mujalan's behavior, but the teacher came over and explained that according to the custom of the country, a girl of that age must agree to marry a man if she loses to him in a fight. The hero was shocked by the corrupt customs, but the teacher encouraged him and asked him with a smile if he regretted losing, because if he had been more careful, he might have already had a wife. Leaving, the tutor said that the princess also did not seem to be very interested in the guy, but hastened to remind him that study is more important than early love. The next morning, Zejin and Mujalan met, and the young man suggested they go to class together, to which the girl agreed. On the way, they talked, and the princess admitted that at first she thought he would only resort to strange techniques, not expecting a masterful swordsmanship. Classmates discussed the pair in surprise, spreading rumors about Sejin's accidental victory over the undead and his entry into the academy by Blatt. Sejin walked by, keeping a nonchalant expression on his face and pretending not to hear the angry gossip. The surprised princess asked how he could walk so calmly and if he really didn't care about what was being said about him. The guy really didn't care, as he was used to it because he was always treated like that in school before. But now, having become stronger than them, he doesn't care about their opinion. The girl said that if she didn't know him, she would have thought that he looked like Shi Zhang and couldn't resist slapping him, after which they laughed. As they continued on their way, they heard some guy making a girl named Lin Bo bow in greeting. Gao Chen accused Lin Bo of not wanting to socialize with them, but the girl parried that he couldn't hurt her at school. The young man assumed that it was their classmate Lin Bo, and she was in trouble. Lin Yun, who came up behind the friends, explained that Gao Chen was the eldest son of the Gao family, and Lin Bo's family could be said to be an offshoot of them. After hearing about the oppression of the Lin family due to his swordsmaster father's illness, Zijin decisively intervened and called his friend to join. Lin Yun was against it because the relationship between aristocrats is very complicated and it would be uncomfortable for him to interfere, but promised to support if necessary. Mujalan called Lin Yang hypocritical, and Zijin, stretching his arms, resolutely headed out to deal with the offenders. As he approached the group, the hero drew everyone's attention, calling for the bullying to stop and reminding them that hurting a girl was a disgrace for a mature guy. Gao Chen arrogantly brushed aside the interference of the second-ranked brat, causing a heated discussion among those present, shocked at the audacity of confronting the eldest son of the Zhao family. Enraged, Gao Chen roughly grabbed Ling Bo's arm, yanking it sharply, and ordered the brat to immediately get away. Seeing such cruel behavior with the girl, Sijin ordered him to get his filthy hands off her before he broke them. Gao Chen tried to slyly draw Lin Yun into the heated conflict, but the latter categorically refused to participate in the fight. After all, it was not his conflict. One of Gao Chen's aides shouted to the guy that his protector wouldn't help, and to remember that the students in the academy weren't rednecks like him. Zijin nonchalantly responded to the provocation, inwardly preparing himself for the imminent attack of Gao's enraged aides. The hero used a rank 1 technique called glaciation, controlling spiritual energy to make the ice thin and smooth that the attacker slipped on. The guy then used the rank 1 technique, fire stream, directing magic at the people lying on the ice. The arrogant opponent loudly scoffed at the seemingly negligible weakness of Zijin's cunning attack. The hero calmly explained that his true goal was only to gently melt the ice, not to seriously harm his opponents. He noted that water was an excellent conductor, but no one in this world knew the meaning of the word, and looked at the guy in surprise, waiting for an explanation. The resourceful young man effectively demonstrated the impressive power of the electroshock technique, instantly striking all the opponents in the water with a powerful current. Standing over the defeated enemies, Saijin couldn't help but ironically remark that only the simplest kindergarten techniques were enough to completely defeat them. No one could figure out if it was a joke, And if the guy really had a second rank, since he had downed 5 people using first and second rank techniques, Gao Chen angrily shouted, "Freak!" and lunged at Lin Yun, accusing him of deliberately sicking this puppy on him to hinder him. Lin Yun replied that it was their squabble, nothing to do with him. Lin Yun wryly remarked that Gao Chen, without getting a scratch, was making unfounded claims and insulting his friend as if he was looking for trouble. Angry and offended, the eldest son of the Gao family walked past the protagonist, pushing him with his shoulder. Xie Jin, approaching Lin Bo, inquired about her well-being after the incident. Gao Chen, without going too far, told the victim not to think like she was free forever since she had been stood up for this time. Xie Jin didn't like this treatment and suggested that the offender repeat the fight, noting that he was talking a lot. Lin Bo held the hero back, thanking him again since they had only met a couple times in class and he wanted to help her. The girl said that she needed to finish off Gao Chen herself, so she pulled out her sword and challenged him to a duel. Shen, barely containing his anger, accused the two of insolence, rebuking Lin Bo for disregarding the family hierarchy and disrespecting his clan. Gao went on to say that a low-grade family had spawned an equally low-grade family while creating magic with his hand behind his back. Lin Yun saw this in time and shouted to Xie Jin and Lin Bo to be careful. The eldest son of the Gao family shouted that people like them had no place among the living and attacked the guy and girl in front of them. Lin Yun said that things were bad because this family used unusual fire in their techniques that was stronger than normal fire, but the princess called it a trifle. Mujalan had met many amazing swordsmen, so when she saw Lin Bo's posture, she realized that she was much stronger than Gao Chen. Not only was the girl able to repel the attack, but she also decided to attack her opponent. However, her victory was hindered by a strong rank 7 breathing technique. When the protagonist realized that Lin Bo was in danger, he couldn't stand by and rushed to help. Once on the ground, they did not see the old man walking towards them, who was using rank 7 magic, wanting to kill Lin Bo. As they approached, the man attacked the girl with powerful magic, confirming his hostile intentions. The young man borrowed Lin Bo's sword, preparing to resist the blows of the dangerous old man. Jin said that strong flames needed wind and began to swing his sword, but his attempts were futile, for the fire was too great and his strength was lacking. The old man doubted that the village lad would have anything to oppose him, calling him too arrogant. The hero explained that he had deliberately provoked the enemy, waiting for the moment when the flames would cut off the paths of retreat. When the flames almost engulfed the young man, he straightened up and threw a grenade with the pin pulled. There was a deafening explosion that shook the surrounding area and for a moment obscured the raging flames. Shijin managed to grab the girl and roll out of the flames with her. Upon seeing them, the princess and Lin Yun ran up to them, worried about their condition. The guy was fine, but the blast wave was too strong, causing Lin Bo to lose consciousness. Lin Yun, unable to hold back, angrily demanded an explanation from Gao Shijin. The disciplinary committee teacher, who was Gao Chen's uncle, replied that he was in charge of discipline in the academy and should teach the troublemakers a lesson. Wichan assumed that the teacher was abusing his position by covering for his nephew. The young man menacingly asked if he wanted to teach him a lesson, because in his opinion, it was the teacher who was causing trouble for people. The indignant mentor's veins swelled, and he interrogated what the student had said. Gao Chen approached his uncle, whom he hurriedly sent to class, saying that it was none of his business. The hero accused Gao Chen of attacking Lin Bo, rebuking the teacher for being biased and trying to avoid responsibility. The people around him understood the wrongdoing of the mentor, but did not dare to say anything. And after Saijin's statement, they looked at him from a different perspective. As they were leaving, the teacher said that in order to duel, they had to formally submit a request in the presence of a witness, which they didn't do, so he stopped them. The young man angrily objected that the nephew had raised his hand to the girl first, and if anyone needed to be stopped, it was him. After all, the teacher had almost killed Lin Bo. The teacher angrily replied that if he wanted to kill her, the rookie would not have been able to stop him and calmly walked away, hoping to repel the blow. Gao Chen, standing beside his uncle, told the young man to stop embarrassing himself and promised to talk to him next time. The hero shouted in, "Next time?" and summoned magic, preparing to attack. Gao Jin fearfully asked what the man was up to and tried to create a defense against his magic, but realized that even an instantly used technique wouldn't be enough. The teacher couldn't believe that he didn't have time to react to the weakling's strike while possessing rank 7. His nephew cried out fearfully, seeing that his uncle was clearly losing the fight. Shi Jin swooped down on the guy with the sword, knocking him back with a blow, and offered to find out who was better. Once free, the uncle gathered himself to help his nephew by shouting that the brat was finished. But the young man didn't give up. He pulled the caps of 3 grenades simultaneously, preparing for a decisive throw. The teacher shouted again about the end of the student as he turned around and sharply threw his secret weapon at him. They did not have time to explode as the principal came to the rescue and disarmed them with magic, for otherwise the educational building would have to be repaired again. In addition to disarming the grenades, he also decided to disarm the teacher, who was clearly out of line, by grabbing his arm and preventing him from hitting the student. The principal said that out of respect for the teacher's grandfather, his good friend, he would not remove him, but he would suspend him from the disciplinary committee. After dealing with the situation, Li Shen called out to Jiajin to follow him. The obedient disciple went, before turning to his friends and asking them to take care of Ling Bo. The old man turned to Gao Cheng, ordering him to return home. Think about his behavior and wait for a message about being able to return to his studies. The student was angry with the hero, but did not dare to do anything about it, fearing a harsher punishment. The hero accused Gao Cheng of attacking Lin Bo, rebuking the teacher for being biased and trying to avoid responsibility. On the way to the office, the headmaster turned to the student walking behind him and said that the trinkets were quite interesting, asking him to keep them for study. The young man was pleased at the principal's interest in his homemade weapon, but asked to keep it a secret. The headmaster asked how the young man planned to escape the explosion, but he admitted that he was prepared to die in battle. Suspecting something wrong, the principal began to speculate about the reasons for the conflict, and Jie Jin was afraid of revealing too much. On the other hand, he didn't want to lie, but he was just about to tell the truth when the old man took him by the shoulder and said that everyone had secrets, and it was okay if he didn't want to reveal them. The old man grinned and asked if the young man was gathering a harem, since everything was leading to the guy dating Mujalan, but he stood up for Lin Bo. The guy explained that he just hates it when someone is bullied and the rest of us do nothing. He said that he used to be cowardly and distrustful, seeing a lot of injustice in the world, but being weak and timid, he couldn't change anything. The hero pointed out that no matter what world you live in or what you do, only when your state of mind comes to normal will you truly stay alive. Xie Jin explained that he had decided to always do the right thing in an effort to become stronger and reach the 10th rank of spiritual perfection. Leaving the principal's office, Xie Jin felt extremely tired, puzzled as to why he had so many problems on his first day of school. The guy was frustrated that he couldn't just spend time with his friends, go out with someone and enjoy school life. And yet the principal was also looking out for him. Recently, Li Shen reminded him of his special status, asking him not to disturb others and to take care of school property. Angered by the order not to damage the property, the hero swung his hand to hit the pillar, shocking a passing teacher that someone was going crazy at the beginning of the school year. The young man saw the pros of studying at the school, striving to reach the level of Mujalan and Lin Yun on his own. His rich battle experience and passing over 100 games gave him the reception to defeat the 6th rank. But the lad wondered if it was enough to be a worthy son of Lin Zun. Walking past the disciples in the courtyard and pondering the need to keep practicing, the young man did not hear his name being called. Using the scientific and technological advancements of the previous world, the hero could create weapons that were unheard of here, but it was still not his own strength, but the strength of a weapon. Deep in thought about the importance of practicing hard when he was young, he didn't notice that someone was calling his name. It was a classmate, Hua Yi, who finally caught up with the pensive boy calling his name. After saying hello, the boy embarrassedly apologized that he didn't hear her insistent call because he was pensive. The girl said that she had overheard a conversation yesterday about the importance of the young boy, for it was thanks to him that the teacher, Gao, who was scaring everyone, was in trouble. After expressing her delight with her confused speech, she took out a neatly folded letter addressed to the boy. His frightened expression gave away the idea that it was a love letter. Hua Yi, slightly shy and blushing, held out the envelope with trembling hands and quietly asked him to take it. After fulfilling the request, the girl calmly went about her business. Watching the departing classmate, the guy closed his eyes with pleasure, realizing how many beauties in his group. The teacher interrupted the young man's dreamy mood, reminding him about the class and suggesting that the letter could wait until recess. The teacher also mentioned that it wasn't necessarily a love message, but could be a challenge to a duel, and the boy, realizing the logicality, decided to take a look. Xijin knocked on the door of the infirmary and it was opened by the friendly Hua Yi, who invited him in. This was the doctor's office where the girl worked and spent a lot of time sensing the abilities of the healing techniques. She pointed her hand forward, politely asking him to pass through and not to be shy. In the room lay Lin Bo, who had been forbidden by the doctor to get up due to a concussion, so she motioned for Xijin to sit down next to her. The young man nodded understandingly, but curiously inquired about the purpose of the unexpected call to the nurse's station. Lingbo noted Xijin's skill and offered him a suitable sword from her home collection, noting his lack of personal weapons. That weapon turned out to be a brownish-yellow demonic oblivion sword. A demonic sword of oblivion? Xijin questioned in surprise. Linbo explained that despite the name, the sword did not begin to control the wielder, causing him to kill people. The hero was perplexed as to why it was so named, assuming that no one in this world was capable of understanding and using this weapon. The girl said she didn't know how to explain it more properly, but felt that he would be able to use the sword. She thought so because yesterday, the young man borrowed her sword and fought with Teacher Gao to save her. Lingbo realized that despite her excitement, Zijin was willing to sacrifice his life, completely abstracted from what was happening during the deadly battle. Frightened by what she said, she asked not to be angry after all. These were just her thoughts. Saijin calmed the girl down, saying that he understood her reasoning and asked if that was why she thought the demon sword was suitable for him. The girl replied that they would know for sure if it was suitable when he saw the weapon, and invited him to come to her house tomorrow afternoon. After waiting for the guy to leave, Hua Yi wondered if it was scary to give a gift from her father to him, but Ling Bo assured her that Xie Jin would be able to find an approach to the sword. The doctor started to say that their meeting was fated, but the sick woman, not meaning it, shouted for her not to talk nonsense. Walking home, Jin pondered that the demonic oblivion sword sounded cool, and if he became one, he would be able to fight at full strength. Wow, how awesome! The young man exclaimed enthusiastically, anticipating receiving the legendary weapon. The next day, without wasting any time, the boy was already under Lin Bo's house. It was definitely her house, because a girl came out of the door and greeted the guest. Xiejin greeted Lin Bo warmly, genuinely interested in her well-being after the recent events. The girl thanked Xiejin for her help, while Hua Yi jokingly resented the hint of her friend's overprotective behavior. As they came closer and saw the doctor, Xiejin was surprised by her presence, while Hua Yi noted that the hero had already saved the girl despite their brief acquaintance. The doctor joked about the possible consequences of the young people's seclusion, causing Lin Bo's embarrassment and the awkwardness of the situation. She abruptly covered the mouth of her doctor friend, standing next to her with her hand in an attempt to stop the jokes, while Zijin watched their warm but amusing relationship with a smile. Walking into the house, the young man noticed the small number of students and wondered if it was vacation time. Lin Bo briefly told the story of her family and the decline of the dojo after the illness of her father, an outstanding swordsman. Right now, her father was too weak and only needed peace and rest, so the dojo had fallen into disrepair and there were only 4 students in the courtyard. Approaching one of the rooms, Lin Bo opened the doors and said that the Devil Oblivion sword was stored there. The first time he saw it, the young man thought it was a katana, but then he realized that it was a 2-handed longsword called a miao dao. Sijin wondered what would happen if he just picked up the sword, so he reached out his hand. As he took the weapon with his hand, he heard the phrase, "What we need we don't know, and what we know is unnecessary for us." The boy couldn't tell if the sword was talking or if he was just hearing it in his head. Then he gripped the weapon even tighter and wondered which iPhone was already out. He heard the voice in his head again. "First you quote Faust and now you're asking about the iPhone?" Finally raising the sword with his hand, the young man heard, "Damn it, I finally met someone who understands me. Let's chat, I'm dying of boredom." A look of fear appeared on the guy's face, and he thought that this wasn't cool at all. The girls watched the guy talking to the sword, and one of them said that the setting wasn't that mysterious and he would be fine. The young man was holding a weapon that kept asking him questions about his background, expenses, annual salary, and availability of winter and summer vacations. Unable to stand it, he shouted that he'd had enough, they weren't right for each other, and put the sword back down. Blade asked for just one question and asked if the guy was planning to gather a harem, because then he was definitely with him. Shijin turned around to the girls standing by the exit and said that despite being hospitable, he was not good at wielding this weapon. Even after walking out the door, the hero continued to hear everything the sword was saying and wondered if it had Bluetooth. The farther Zijin moved away from the sword, the fainter and more intermittent the mysterious signal became, gradually quieting down in his head. The Shang Man curiously asked Lin Bo where and under what circumstances her father had acquired this unusual sword. Lin Bo replied that she didn't know exactly. It was her father's second sword, which he used very little but could defeat almost anyone. The conversation was interrupted by someone's voice asking if she was bragging and suggesting that her father go for a walk if he was so cool. Turning around, they were bewildered to see 3 guys, the main one saying he'd heard about the glory of their dojo and had come to challenge them. The girl, realizing that she wasn't ready for the trouble that was coming, asked Sai-jin to leave, saying that she would deal with it herself. Lin Bo explained that in the past, masters came to their dojo to exchange experiences, but now only weaklings like these 3, pointing to the attackers. One of the guys confirmed Zijin's guess about the Gao family's revenge, saying that they had come to deal with the girl who had crossed their path. Lin Bo said that as a member of the family, she accepted the challenge and started to draw her sword. But Zijin stopped her, suggesting that these weak henchmen had come to ferret out their abilities and offered to help deal with the scum, as the girl was not yet fully recovered. The brigands started shouting that he was talking nonsense and would now learn the power of their swords, asking him to show what he himself was capable of, after which the three of them swarmed at him. Setting up, the hero drew his sword and, using the streaming wound technique his father had taught him, scattered everyone. Watching the incredible power of this technique, the girls opened their mouths. Approaching the opponents lying on the floor, the young man asked what was wrong with them. So weak. Linbo looked at Shijin with respect, realizing his strength after all. He had easily defeated 3 opponents of the 3rd rank, surpassing ordinary humans. The guy reflected that in this world, ordinary people were outnumbered, while in his previous world, they would be considered artificial warriors, and there they would have defeated him. Still sitting by his defeated opponents, Shijin slapped one, telling him to wake up and stay awake. Grabbing the clothes of the awake opponent, Shijin found out that they were hired by the Gao family, but they don't know the specific customer, hearing only pleas for mercy. Some warrior standing nearby said that this time they had really hit a nerve with the Gao family, and now this old dojo was unlikely to survive for long. Lingbo shouted, "Lu Xiao!" calling him a traitor and asking how dare he come here. The man replied in a friendly manner, why would she do that since he was her father's disciple, and came back to see how they were doing since the dojo might close down. Lu Xiao cynically offered to shelter Linbo and her father if the dojo closed, putting the old man in a barn and making the girl his concubine maid. The former student of the dojo noted annoyingly that this guy must be a new student, since he was fighting at the drop of a hat when he saw Zijin running at him with a sword. Lu Xiao, confident in his superiority, easily broke the sword of the attacking Shijin and now stood there, pointing the tip of his weapon directly at the face of his disarmed opponent. The young man had many ideas on how to overpower his opponent, but there were a few things he needed to do first. He demanded compensation for his broken sword before continuing and tried to push back his opponent's blade with the remnants of his weapon. Shijin was upset about the second broken sword, but took comfort in the fact that Lin's sword was intact, believing that only one of his blades had been broken so far. Lu Xiao laughed, noting that only this decaying dojo had such an interesting guy. Continuing to laugh, he hid his sword and introduced himself as the oldest of the dojo's fellow students who had long rebelled against his mentor. Shijin proudly introduced himself as a student of the prestigious Royal Academy, hoping to impress. Lu Xiao warned that by going against the Gao family, Lingbo would get no help, and to keep the dojo, must participate in next week's tournament and win it. The girl angrily inquired if he had come just for that statement. The opponent replied that he originally wanted to end the place, but now he sees that it's not all that hopeless and advised her to ask her boyfriend to participate in the tournament instead. Shijin and Lingbo blushed, barely being able to pronounce the words, while Hua Yi laughed at the word boyfriend and called the gentleman straightforward. Still blushing, the girl apologized for her friend's inconvenience, and the latter apologized for the broken sword. She said that the sword, though not bad, was inexpensive, and it had served her well, so she wasn't sorry it was broken. The young man asked what kind of sword this Lu Xiao had and why it was so sharp. Langbo narrated about her father's first sword, cicada singing, that left the dojo unprotected except for the Devil Oblivion sword, and the young man wondered about the possibility of mastering that weapon again. The girl didn't want to involve her friend in all of this again, for she was already grateful for his willingness to help. She had long been prepared for something like this, and if he was able to control the sword, she would ask the favor of overpowering Lu Xiao to help her out once more. Upon reflection, Linbo said that it was very selfish and asked her friends not to see her off. After all, they would see her tomorrow at school. Looking away from her friend, the boy was called by one of the bandits, who asked if he could go now, if there were no more questions for them. The young man almost forgot about the brats and returned to them, asking if the Gao family would continue to send people like them to bother Linbo. The hero mentally made a plan for revenge, deciding to teach the offenders a lesson by tying them naked to a pole to intimidate others. Leaving the punished offenders, the friends continued on their way, and Hua Yi wanted to make a request, but the young man beat her to it, deciding to help despite Lingbo's warnings. Struck by the boy's kindness, Hua Yi confessed her budding feelings, but he turned the conversation by asking about Mr. Lin. Hua Yi told of Lin Le's reclusiveness, and the young man, mentioning the rumors of his injury and loss of strength, asked to narrate the details of the story. Surprised by her interlocutor's ignorance, the girl with wide-open eyes began the tale of the great battle between humans and foul beasts, culminating in a decisive battle. Headland heroically defeated a squad of wolves and their commander, sent for a surprise attack, but the price of victory was heavy wounds, depriving him of the ability to wield a sword. The young man explained that since he had been injured during the battle, he should be treated as a hero with due respect, and asked why this was not the case. The young man, after listening to the story of the aristocrats' injustice, attributed the terrible character of Gao Chen and Gao Qijin to their family's heredity. Hua Yi, chuckling slightly, inquired curiously about the future plans of her determined interlocutor. Zijin firmly stated his intention to wipe the Gao family into powder, leaving no trace of their influence behind. One of the teachers was angry, realizing that Linbo was preparing for the palace tournament, but Si Jin was not attending his classes, causing him to crush the pencil in his hand. Seeing this, Lin Yun turned to Hua Yi sitting nearby, asking if their friend had gone to see Lin Bo. The girl only smiled enigmatically and replied that she did not know the whereabouts of her comrade. Yun marveled at his friend's unusual nature of doing whatever he wanted and getting into trouble, and Mujilan turned away resentfully, saying, Meanwhile, the protagonist was already standing by the sword, preparing to try to own it again. He didn't know what others felt when touching this demonic sword, but he didn't feel anything bad himself. Taking the sword, the boy felt nothing unusual, shocking the girl, who explained that usually touching the blade caused strange thoughts and could take away one's sanity. Carefully studying the sword, the young man was perplexed as to why it remained silent. After thinking about it, he remembered the tournament and asked Lin Bo to tell him about it, a competition between the best warriors, which had not been held for many years. The girl talked about the two equal schools, martial arts and spiritual practices, noting that warriors develop physical strength and mages develop spiritual strength, achieving different effects. But now it seems that absolutely everyone is a mage, although there are sections in the academy that study martial techniques as something auxiliary, the young man reflected. The girl confirmed that originally there were schools of martial arts and spiritual practices, but one day one person changed that once and for all. The study of spiritual practices became more accessible, allowing anyone to become a mage, while martial arts is only practiced by the gifted. Even though their dojo is very good and shows excellent results during the tournament, it has still fallen into disrepair. The young man asked curiously about the man who had changed his attitude towards spiritual practices, to which the girl was perplexed and wondered where he had come from, not knowing such elementary things. The guy tilted his head in shame, thinking that his irresponsible parents should be blamed for this. The friends spoke enthusiastically about the first teacher of spiritual practices, the founder of their school, who shared the practices and became the genius of the millennium. The boy was distracted by the sword speaking, stating their shared origins from another world. The blade quoted his famous saying, "I am very lonely," hinting at a deep philosophical meaning that Xie Jin might not have realized. Hearing this, the youngster began to roar, suggesting that the sword was from the generation of the eternally sad. Linbo was startled by the boy's strange behavior, but he calmed her down, telling her that everything was fine. After calming down, the young man inquired about the reason for the sword's sudden talkativeness, who admitted that he wanted to keep quiet out of resentment, but couldn't help himself. The sword advised Xi Jin to meet with Ling Lei, and the young man immediately expressed his desire to see the girl's father. Linbo smilingly took Xi Jin to her father, noting the necessity of this meeting for the Devil Sword's inheritance. Ling Lei didn't mind seeing the boy and allowed him to go in alone. After entering the room and closing the door, the young man apologized for the disturbance, not yet knowing what lay ahead of him. Preparing for a serious conversation, the lad introduced himself as a classmate of the man's daughter. Ling Lei's unexpected attack took Xi Jin by surprise, making him wonder how he was able to strike without a sword. The man sitting in front explained that he simply combined his thoughts and some ice cold, obtaining a substance as sharp as a sword blade. The young man almost died of fear, and the man noted that a normal person wouldn't have even felt the strike coming, but he not only felt it, but also had time to react. Lingley added that this time, his naive little girl had found a worthwhile man, and very seriously asked Xi Jin if he wanted to marry her. The lad asked fearfully why so immediately, and if the gentleman didn't like the fact that Lin Bo had arranged their meeting. Lingla jokingly suggested that the guy didn't like his daughter, and advised him to think about the future, hinting at Lin Bo's potential beauty. Xi Jin really didn't like this kind of behavior from his father in defending his friend, said that she would decide who she wanted to marry. Ling Lei, chuckling, realized that his daughter and probably other girls in the school were attracted to Xi Jin's character, reminiscent of himself in his youth, while the young man felt uncomfortable with the old man's strange behavior. The girl's father offered to become Xie Jin's godfather to give him the sword to defeat Lu Xiao, since he didn't want to marry his daughter. Xie Jin objected, citing his spiritual deity father and 10 years of swordsmanship training, doubting the usefulness of a few days of lessons from Ling Lei. When the frustrated young man was about to leave, Ling Lei intrigued him with the Devil Moon Ice Stream technique and other powerful dojo techniques applicable to the unique sword. The boy rushed to his knees to bow to his new godfather, for his real father had not taught him any techniques. The young man was worried whether he would be able to master a technique in the week before the tournament, and whether it would help him in a fight with his opponent. Ling Lei noted the lad's giftedness and the possibility of success with intensive training, and then asked the swordmaster about the possibility of extending the time within a week. Jijin put his hand on the blade, who replied that he didn't know yet himself because he needed to assess the guy's spiritual strength, but tentatively 1 year. Then the sword said, "Follow me," and said, "Bola below me," from which the hero began to shout fearfully, asking what kind of spell it was. Suddenly finding himself in an unfamiliar place, Jijin learned from the sword that his soul had been transported to a subconscious dream world where a year could pass in a second of real time with a strong spirit. The hero enthusiastically remarked that it was just like the movie Inception, and that was what the sword meant. Linglei walked through this city, marveling that is it really true that there were people who had crossed over to their world from this one? Shijin asked Mr. Lin in surprise how he ended up in this strange dream world. The latter replied that it was a convenient sword ability, and not only would they have enough time here, but he would also be able to take the young man to the limit of his abilities. Linglei explained that he couldn't hold a sword in reality, but it was different in the dream world, and added that the Devil Moon Ice Stream technique required a strong body, unsuitable for the fragile Ling bow. As he began his training, Mr. Lin mentioned the effectiveness of individual lessons and mentioned revival in the event of death, which greatly frightened the young man. While thinking about this phrase, he was distracted and didn't notice the attack coming from behind. The hero shouted to the sword, asking if since he could create such a place, he could not bring some systematicness to the practice of swordsmanship. Linla sternly reminded that this was not a game, and the sword apologized for the lack of a regular exercise system, asking to respect established customs. An anxious Linbo was approached by Hua Yi and inquired about Xie. The girls looked at the door of the room, hoping that the guy who had been there for the third day would now come out of there alive and unharmed. But they did not know that there was no one in the room, for they were in another world where the young man was all wounded and very tired. A whole and unharmed Lin Lei, as if he was omnipotent, said that maybe he should stop chilling and resting, pointing at the guy. Coughing, the guy started begging the sword to help him, at least a little, and heal his wounds. It worked, and in the same hour, everything healed, and he stood up fully recovered, realizing that his father had been doing him favors in training, or else he would have died tens of thousands of times already. Standing up as if he had gained strength, the young man put his sword against his opponent, offering to fight again, because this time he would definitely defeat him. Mr. Lin was amazed that the young man, having died so many times, still had not lost his fighting spirit, because despite the unreality of what was happening, the feeling of death here was realistic. Anyone would have felt fear and tried to avoid it. But the enemy pondered whether it was possible to keep a cold heart and sober mind at his age, and more importantly, not be afraid of death. Deciding that it was time for a change of strategy, Ling Lei used the final form of the Devil Moon Ice Stream technique. The guy watched with eyes huge with surprise, puzzled as to whether it was still only a swordsmanship. The man said that since Jijin already knew the technique, he offered to try to reflect the final form. Taking the sword, the young man began to try to counter the blows flying at him. This technique forces the body to reach the speed limit so that it does not affect the sword in any way, and the person becomes one with it. Throughout his life, Linbo's father had honed this technique, gathering the power of the moon and stars. Directing a new attack at the hero, he asked what exactly Zijin wished for with all his heart. The guy realized that he wouldn't be able to repel it in time and would die after being scared, because it was really scary. He realized that he was afraid of death and never felt that his life meant anything in this world. The young man sank into the memories of his childhood, realizing how insignificant and useless his existence had been. The images of his parents had been erased from his memory in the years since they had abandoned him to his fate. So it didn't matter if he lived or not, and no one would be sad if he died, disappearing from this world. But now he is not the same, because in the other world he is surrounded by good people, his friends. And so his meaning of life, fate, and goals he will determine himself. With just such a message, he rushed into battle to repel the attack. The fight ended and the opponents separated, recovering their breath. Mr. Lin looked at the young man with delight, because he really did it, and fell to the ground without strength. Waking up, the guy heard from the sword that he had been unconscious for a very long time, and Lin Lei had long gone. The hero looked around in surprise, noting the unusual details of the surroundings. Shijin asked the sword about the nature of this world, and the blade told him that everything was created from the young man's memories, including details long forgotten. As he was about to leave, the boy decided to look at one more place beforehand. He froze at the door, remembering that in that world his mother had married for the second time, but could not resurrect her image. Overwhelmed by the desire to see his mother, he resolutely opened the door, preparing to step into the past. What was his surprise when, stepping forward, he found himself in his old home. The young man saw little himself and his mother playing with him, very cheerful and happy. He was not long able to look at this picture, and as soon as the woman raised her head to see who had come in, the door immediately closed and she saw no one. Scared by what he saw, Zijin ran out into the familiar world, where Blade explained that it was his strong memories that allowed him to enter that world. Blade said after leaving the guy that he did not think that he loved his mother so much, and he would cry with emotion. Leaving the room a few days later, the young man was surprised to find his friends, all this time waiting for his return. A few days later, the arena for the tournament was ready. Lin Yun and Mujilan discussed the upcoming tournament, noting the large number of strong participants who had gathered for the first time in 10 years. Now the differences between schools were blurring, so tournaments like this were a good opportunity to show what martial arts could do, and there were many students from their academy. The friends talked about the complicated system of selection and high competition, where luck plays not the least role in determining the winner. Talking among themselves, the friends suddenly noticed that it was their comrade Zijin's turn. The training had been very intense, and the guy had slept for several days afterward, but he had not recovered his strength, so he was constantly yawning. One of the upperclassmen noticed the yawning and tired Zijin and curiously asked if he was the famous freshman hero. Mujilan started asking a bunch of questions to Lin Yun, whether he was familiar with Xie first high school student opponent, what he was like, and whether he was strong. The guy honestly answered that there might be a problem with this competitor because he was around rank 5 right now, and even if their friend could win, he would spend too much strength. The senior mockingly noted Zijin's calmness, considering him an arrogant upstart, and began to prepare to attack, confident in his superiority. The opponent declared the unfairness of life and his intention to put the junior in his place, rushing to attack the stepping stone on his way to victory. Wachin nonchalantly stopped the sword blade with 2 fingers, advising his opponent not to hold back due to the age difference. The stunned senior couldn't believe what was happening, suspecting some sort of deception or illusion. The high school student screamed in panic, fearing for the safety of his precious sword in the hands of the young man. The boy let go of the weapon with a slight movement, and the blade bounced smoothly towards his stunned opponent. The opponent, trying to save face, retreated, making excuses of inattention and condescension to the junior, not expecting such force. The overconfident senior shouted no more indulgences and rushed forward again. Shijin once again grabbed his sword with 2 fingers, not allowing himself to be injured. The opponent was almost crying, begging him not to do this. After all, he still wanted to sword fight. The young man continued to hold the blade, and sparks of thoughtfulness appeared in his eyes. The senior fell to his knees, dropped the sword beside him, and realized that the only thing left to do was to give up, because he definitely wouldn't win. Watching this, Lin Yun assumed that the guy would have a psychological trauma, and the princess wondered if their friend had always been so strong. Smiling, Hua Yi revealed that last time, Xijin had tied the warriors who were causing trouble for the Lin family to the pillars in the center of the city. Due to the large number of tournament participants, Gao Chen was among them, displeased with the Lin family's presence and determined to prevent them from winning at all costs.